Welcome to Occasional Randomness. I'm your host, Eric Scott, and joining me, as always, is my fellow co-host, someone who's not an art critic, Jason Johnson.
Does that mean that I could convince you to buy one of my fine works of art? I probably should warn you that I can't even draw stick figures, so probably not even in any happy little trees over here or anything like that. It's junk. It's really junk.
Yeah, but do you use paint or do you use your own blood for your drawings? Which one?
Uh, well, it's not my blood.
All right, so this time around we'll be finishing season 1 of Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus, and that will be episodes 7 through 9. And as we mentioned the last couple of times, due to all the wonderful things coming out lately, our trip through Farscape season 4 will continue soon? Question mark. Sometime
Yeah,
eventually.
we're definitely in the golden time of everybody throwing good content at us right now. So we'll have to decide how we want to do that, but we'll get there. We promise.
Yep. Still have 11 episodes to go, or 12 episodes to go, plus the Peacekeeper Wars. So still plenty of stuff to talk about. We'll get there. And our little plug that we always do here. If you like what we do here, please give us a like or a review wherever you listen to this at, or help spread the word. Let people know about us. We'd appreciate it.
Every little bit helps.
Yep. All right. So we'll just do a little recaps here and then jump on into the lots to talk about because lots happened in these 3 episodes. All right. So let's see. We'll start, I guess, at episode 7 because that's where we're starting.
Well, we did end at 6, so 7 would be the
Yeah, that's
logical next step.
yeah, makes sense. Episode 7, Art for Art's Sake. A recuperating Angela tells the police that Daredevil saved her life and tells them where Muse's lair is. Detective Kim reports to Fisk, who's apparently very angry that Daredevil has returned, and she says that the primary suspect for Muse is a troubled young man named Bastian Cooper. Meanwhile, Luca asks Vanessa to return to her criminal activities behind Fisk's back. In a session with Heather, Bastian thanks her for helping him to embrace his true identity. She realizes he is Muse, and Bastian knocks her unconscious. Matt and the Anti-Vigilante Task Force, or AVTF if you're into acronyms, separately find paintings of Heather in Muse's lair and go to save her. Daredevil arrives first at Heather's office and rescues her in a wonderful, brutal fight scene that we come to expect from Daredevil. As the task force prepares to enter, Heather fatally shoots Muse before passing out. Matt stabilizes her before the task force arrives. However, Fisk gives credit for stopping Muse to the task force and publicly declares them to be heroes.
There's a first time for everything.
Hey, And Daniel threatens BB into removing eyewitness mentions of Daredevil's involvement in the incident from her blog. And then finally, a recovering Heather tells Matt that she heard Daredevil say her name. And then in the closer, Vanessa seemingly sends Luca to kill Fisk, but this is a trap, and Buck instead kills Luca.
Which jumps us quickly into episode 8, Isle of Joy. Dex, hey, remember him? Is moved from solitary confinement to general population on Fisk's orders. Fisk also reveals his imprisonment of Adam to Vanessa and watches as she kills him. Fisk promotes Daniel to deputy mayor of communications for the blackmail of BB in the previous episode. See comment there. And invites Heather to his black and white ball fundraiser. Matt realizes that Fisk is Heather's patient, further straining their relationship as he contests her anti-vigilante views. Then, at Josie's bar, Matt learns that Foggy was celebrating an impending court win the night he died. Believing Fisk hired Dex to silence Foggy, Matt interrogates Dex and injures him. Dex later kills his doctor and a guard before escaping prison. At the ball, Fisk blackmails Jack Duquesne, who is a sword-wielding vigilante swordsman, and other socialites into supporting his port project. BB, who's aware of Fisk's involvement in her uncle Ben Urich's murder, asks Commissioner Gallo to help bring down Fisk and the task force. Matt deduces that Vanessa hired Dex to kill Foggy and confronts her. As Fisk starts to tell Heather that Matt is Daredevil, Dex arrives and shoots Fisk. Matt jumps in front of the bullet and is critically wounded.
You have one job, just stand there and the whole series is over, but nope. And that leads into episode 9, Straight to Hell. Flashback to a year and a half earlier, where Vanessa asks Dex to kill Foggy, who she says is working on a case which could expose her activities in Red Hook, in exchange for Dex's old life. Back in the present, seconds after last episode, Dex escapes the ball and Matt is hospitalized. Fisk cuts off power to New York City and orders Buck to kill Matt, who escapes to his apartment, finding Frank Castle there. Both of them fight the task force officers who have come to kill them, including Cole North, who has been revealed to be Hector's murderer. The pair reunite with Karen, who asked Frank to protect Matt after learning of Dex's escape. Matt and Karen track down Foggy's case and discover the Fisks are trying to establish a city-state in Red Hook. Frank, all on his own, fights the task force in Red Hook but gets captured. Fisk's campaign director, Sheila Rivera, exposes Commissioner Gallo's attempt to undermine Fisk, who brutally kills him. And yes, he does. Fisk declares martial law, outlaws vigilantism, and imprisons Jack, Frank, and other dissidents in Red Hook. He offers Heather the position of mental health commissioner, which she accepts. And in the end, Matt recruits Jerry, Detective Kim, and other honest police officers to help save the city. But not quite the end, because if you stayed through the credits, in the mid-credits scene, an imprisoned Frank tricks a prison guard and begins to break free.
Dun, dun, dun.
To be continued. All right, so that's a wrap for season 1, down from 18 episodes to 9, which, probably good. I'm glad they're working on season 2, since they already have half those episodes probably done already, before they broke it up, at least planned anyway. So we aren't left with a bunch of cliffhangers forever. So what'd you think? We definitely got answers to most of our questions from our last 2 podcasts, but anything else you want to mention before we jump into things?
Probably just an overall statement here that I may be a bit biased with this series because, our previous experiences with Punisher and Daredevil and all that in our previous podcasting lives. But I'm thoroughly enjoying it. You're right. They left us with quite a few pieces hanging, and they answered a lot, but pretty serious cliffhangers here at the end that there's obviously got to be a lot of resolution to. But I think, in my opinion, that's a good thing. I mean, we have a little bit of a wait, but we knew going into this that, and the writers knew as well, that the second half, season 2, whatever you want to call it, was already greenlit. And so, like you said, they've already rolled in through production. We're guaranteed to get this. And like some of the previous times where we were like, are they going to approve season 2? Are they going to approve season 3? All this kind of stuff. So, I mean, look at some of the other Marvel shows that have not gotten a second season, despite me wanting another Moon Knight series. But yeah, how about you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I loved it. I'm a Daredevil fanboy here, and that's why we do the podcast about them. So, and I did think, yeah, they did a good job throughout these 9 episodes, kind of slowly spooling out the answers to the plot lines that they set up, and then of course having more questions and more set up. But that's how they kind of really win and keep you entertained. And they definitely surprised me with a few of the character twists that we'll get into, like with Vanessa and Fisk's campaign director Sheila. I didn't see that coming. Yeah, I mean, overall, I wasn't really like annoyed with the plot lines or wishing they would just get on with it, you know, any particular plot line kind of dragged, other than getting back into costume, which we talked about before last podcast. Kind of like the hallmark of Daredevil has always been, their fight scenes, which are like kind of like brutally real, and they didn't disappoint in these last episodes. And of course, especially when you bring Frank the Punisher into things, that kind of ramps things up a tad. So, I guess if I had not a gripe, but just like oh, okay, I wish I would have done more. Is kind of a little bummed that Muse wasn't really much more than almost like a distraction in this episode or this series. He wasn't more of a major piece of the season.
Yeah, as we'll get into, like you're right there. It's almost like he was a mechanism to move Heather and Matt to a certain place, less than the overarching villain, which is what we were expecting, right? So
Yeah, which I mean, maybe that got shuffled around in the rewrite that they had done. I'm not sure. Although that also means I was surprised that Karen came back at the end. Again wasn't expecting that. And it was kind of nice that Matt alluded to like her and Frank having some kind of untold feelings towards each other, sort of, which, I think we've all suspected from prior seasons of their MCU TV shows. And probably also that the whole Karen, Frank, Matt subplot was probably also due to rewrites, So, but overall, loved it, and I really can't wait for season two.
Yeah, I definitely agree overall, as I kind of said before. But also definitely agree with you on the Karen thing, right? Because I convinced myself that they threw Karen and Foggy, which yes, we didn't get any more Foggy yet, but at this point, they just put all that up front to placate us old Netflix series fans, and that was going to be it. So I didn't think we were going to get any more Karen until the rumors that we'd had that they were coming back for season two. So the fact that she showed up in this at all was a huge surprise to me.
Yeah, 'cause we'll get into it, but yeah, when Frank and Matt are down on the street, all bloodied and beat up, wherever, and they get hit with headlights. I'm like, uh-oh, the rest of the cops found them, and it's like, no, it's Karen. Like, Karen, oh my God. All right, so let's kind of jump into some of the stuff here. Otherwise, why are we doing this?
To hear ourselves talk.
Yeah, yeah, just to talk about what we like, and record it and publish it out to the whole world. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. Spoiler: we'd be doing this anyway.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
So episode 7, not quite self-contained, but it was pretty much all about Muse and the fallout from his death, which happens towards the end there. The NYPD's figured out who he probably is. They aren't quite sure, but after looking at the drawings and paintings in his secret lair, see last episode, they figure out that he's obsessed with Heather. So it must have been a great likeness because they could recognize who it was. And it's kind of cool how Matt also discovered that, but since he's blind, obviously, and his radar sense doesn't show you like fine details, right? That he felt the paintings, and I guess because they're actually paintings with like relief and depth, it wasn't just a drawing, kind of, he could recognize it, that it was Heather's face, which I guess that's thanks to a flashback scene or a scene before of him feeling her face before they went to work. So great job hanging that lantern on what happened. But so I guess it's kind of a good thing Muse wasn't an abstract artist, huh? Otherwise, who's this woman? Is a woman? We don't know.
Yeah, he was actually a cubist. That's what makes it really amazing.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, yeah, there was definitely a Chekhov's face touch, right? When they have the scene of them, being slightly romantic before in the apartment before all that kind of stuff gets broken out into. Um, so yeah, it was a little bit, but I was able to roll with that. It kind of like okay, they were showing that to show that he would be able to recognize it by touch. I did want to go back and call out though that that scene where where Matt, I'll specify my he, returns to the secret lair and he starts looking at the paintings. They used another one of those Billy Club drop in Spider-Man like entrances, which I just kind of laughed at. I was like, that's I don't know why they're doing that this season, but it's kind of funny to see him just kind of like swing in on a Billy Club like he's Spider-Man.
Yeah, and of course, the crooked cop Powell comes in at the end. He like bangs the billy club off the thing off his face and knocks him out and leaves. so,
That made the whole scene worth it
yeah,
right there. But yeah,
so wrong place, wrong time, dude. And yeah, as we mentioned, or I mentioned before, we have another great fight scene, which Daredevil does great between Daredevil and Muse in a confined space again in Heather's office.
with his super taekwondo skills, which were called out.
hmm Although I may have to watch it again or whatever, but I don't know if Heather really had to kill Muse necessarily. I can't remember if he was going for the gun or she was. I can't remember, but where she was trying to save Daredevil. I don't know, whatever. But it does lead to some good scenes later with her trying to come to grips with killing somebody, and then her and Matt's differing views on vigilantes. I'm like, yeah, one kind of saved you, sort of. So you might want to be appreciative of them, but whatever. And we'll get to that, I'm sure, here in a minute. And I kind of loved how Fisk, of course, pivots to, well, let's credit the Anti-Vigilante Task Force instead, and that way we can push them publicly and get them out there and like, hey, look, the city's helping stop this infestation of illegal activities by vigilantes. And I guess Daniel's getting a little more power hungry or emulating Fisk more. I don't know, but he manages to get BB to bury that part of her story, which I'm not sure what to think about that. Like, was she really scared of him, or did she just do it to still kind of get her inside info because she has, he's one of her friends, so to speak. So she's still trying to like schmooze him, or just okay, sure, so that he'll still keep feeding her stuff so she can report on it. I don't know. I mean, I don't think at this point she has much of a reason to be scared of Daniel or Fisk yet. I'm not sure.
Well, I think, and I think we get it kind of pointed out when she has the later conversation with the chief there, that you know it's like a long con, because I had the same thought when I first watched it, right? That I'm like, why is she agreeing to this? Like, does she have no ethics, or does he have something better on her than we're seeing? You know, what's the point here? But you know, I think we're, and hopefully we'll see more of it next season, in the second half. That she has a long con going where a lot of this is her just trying to get in so that she can start working on revenging her uncle. So I don't know.
Yeah, she's somehow get evidence that Fisk killed Ben, or just what he's really doing as mayor now, or is he still really, once a criminal, always a criminal kind of thing, or whatever. But yeah, I'm thinking she's smarter than she's letting on. So
Yeah, I agree with that analysis. The other thing I wanted to, and I think we'll do some deeper dive. I would keep saying that, but we'll circle back to this one when we kind of wrap up the show. But I, I'm struggling here with Heather, and like I say, we'll get into it a little bit. But these last couple episodes, as we walk through them, I just kind of question how her character is playing out in them. So kind of keep that in mind as we walk through the rest of it. And I want to get your thoughts at the end on where she ends up.
okay, yeah, I've got some ideas or things to say about it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And one of the twists that I mentioned that I didn't see coming, or they kept it pretty close to the vest, and played it up pretty well, was what side was Vanessa really on? You know, when she meets with Luca, and he's like, hey, why don't you, go back and do your old stuff, and maybe get rid of your boy there. It's like, was she? And then I'm thinking like, well, was she really mad enough at Fisk for leaving their criminal empire behind to become mayor for whatever he's doing, because he hasn't really told her yet, and being away from her for a while, I guess after he got shot in the face by Echo and whatever else that, and she had her little affair with Adam or whatever. Like, would she really have tried to kill Fisk? That kept me guessing. And of course, it's not going to work, right? Because otherwise, again, he's a main character, and you can't just, have him, killed in the shadows, right? That wouldn't be fitting. But it's still going to have me up until the point where, he's sitting there in his, restaurant all to himself, eating his dinner, and Lucas sneaks up behind him, and suddenly he gets shot down by Buck, who's like in the shadows in front of Fisk. Like I had to watch that like twice to figure out where'd the bullet come from. Like I didn't see where it happened the first time. It was so fast. And another mystery that we've got resolved is we know where Fisk eats most of his dinners now, or at least his main dinner. I guess before his second dinner later in front of Adam in his secret lair. So,
Yeah, and after second breakfasts and third
yeah.
breakfasts. Yeah, so this is one where I'm going to admit to completely having this one wrong. I had Vanessa pegged as kind of the new kingpin, quotes around kingpin, but I was expecting that there was going to be a major build up between the two of them, and like you said, I didn't think the actual attempt on Fisk was going to work out, but because we got to have the character, but I thought maybe it was legitimate, like she was actually setting him up to get him, start taking some shots and start putting Fisk on the run and all that. And maybe even in the second season, we were going to get a war between her and Fisk as they compete over the kingpin of crime role. Him in the mayor's seat and her trying to run a criminal empire. Um, but as we get to with the Atom resolution, they definitely got me on that one. So I didn't see it. I didn't see how that was going to play out at all.
Yeah, so they did a pretty good job in the misdirections, or the not playing their hand too far. So it's cool. I like when you're so involved in it that you don't see things coming. And then we get the last two episodes where everything happens. So,
Because it's been a quiet TV show up at
yeah,
this
I mean,
point.
seven episodes. It's like, yeah, okay, where's really something really gonna happen right now? And we kind of like learn much of the secrets that we've been guessing on these last seven episodes. Get into Fisk's ultimate endgame. But quick, back to Adam. Apparently, Fisk and Vanessa have a kind of a reconciling moment and he starts to bring her into what his plan is, and yeah, I guess she could either let Adam go or shoot him. Fisk, I guess, gives her that option, and still wasn't quite sure if she was in or not in or whatever. So I'm thinking like, okay, she might pull the gun and point it at Fisk, right? But nope, turns around, shoots Adam in a cell, and okay, didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, this is where things, I thought we're gonna blow up. Ha ha ha. They did for Adam, but like I said, this was where I was still tricked. Like I really was thinking there was gonna be a larger play out between the two of them, and you mentioned going back and rewatching the last scene. This was the one that I had to go back and check because I missed the gun key setup the first time I watched it. And but yeah, there's like the gun on the table, the key on the table, and she has a choice of releasing him, which Fisk acts like he's gonna let him go, or the gun, and she chooses the gun, and it's like okay, from then on, no more marriage counseling, no more anything. Like we're back to good, and that was kind of an interesting way to fix your relationship. But
Yeah, although I guess fitting for who they are.
right, right. I started to say something like that. Like, yeah, I guess that for them it works, but normally that's not how you kind of resolve your marital counseling needs.
Yeah, and I'm sure if she would have let him go, then he would have walked outside and got capped by Buck or somebody anyway. So
Oh yeah, Buck was standing right there. It
yeah.
was
So,
in the shadows.
mhm. And let's see, keeping on with the Fisk master plan as it's unraveling here, or not, as we're finally seeing what's going on. Fisk has Dex moved from solitary to general population. I'm guessing with hopes that because he was a former federal agent, that prisoners just love that, so that he would get killed by the other prisoners, especially since he's got his big glove things on, so he can't actually throw things and use his abilities. So I was kind of thinking like when Matt met him in prison, I guess to talk to him about why did he kill Foggy, that I thought, okay, maybe he intentionally banged Dex's head in the table to get him injured enough to get him transferred out of the prison population into like the prison hospital, and then maybe somehow back into solitary for a little bit while he heals up or something, to like kind of protect him so he could get more out of him later of like who really was behind him killing Foggy. Although I don't know, maybe I'm kind of reading too much into that. Maybe I'm thinking, you know, three-dimensional chess when it wasn't really, because Matt still and hasn't come to any kind of resolution or catharsis or whatever with Foggy's death, so he's still got, and justifiably probably lots of repressed anger over that. So maybe just took it out on Dex and OL, which unfortunately, or of course, Dex uses that to escape from prison, as only Dex can, by
Yeah.
taking out a guard with one of his loose teeth that he pulled out of his head. So I'm like, of course, why not?
Yeah. So that was one of my major questions for this as well. If I have like, you know, again, I'm not even going to call it a quibble, but like trying to understand the justification and what happened. That was one of my main ones. Did Matt hurt Dex intentionally to allow him to escape? Was it Dex's plan all along to push Matt to injure him so he could get out through the infirmary? Yeah, I'm not sure what we were supposed to take from that because part of me was like, and my wife was watching this episode with me, and she was like, "Yeah, that's what happened, right?" And I was like, "Well, how it seems a little out of character for Matt to want Dex to escape because how many more people is he going to kill? I mean, that's just by releasing him. That's a lot of bodies that are going to end up on his conscience. But couldn't a fight if that was Dex's plan to get Matt to injure him? Wouldn't a fight with any other inmate do the same thing? Why did it have to be Matt? So I've gone back and forth on where I kind of side on this, and I'm not sure which side I'm actually on. Did he cause it, or was it just something that Dex took advantage of?
Yeah, could be, fights with inmates, he might have been killed, right? He might have been shivved or something happens where he couldn't fight back because he got those stupid gloves on. So maybe, yeah, yeah. So like, who pushed whose buttons, right? You know? I guess maybe we'll never know, or I'm guessing they're gonna have another meeting in season two, and maybe it'll come out or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of like which came first, right? Right. So, so
Well, as we'll see, Dex being out has consequences as we move forward. So
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Matt didn't want him to get released because then, like to your point, the body count would just go up, right? So who knows? It's fun to think about.
unless he feels like he can throw him off another building. So
Yeah, unless he's finally coming over to Frank's side of things, but just slowly. And then yeah, we learn also. So yeah, Matt I guess goes to Josie's bar, which is closed because of the damage from even over a year ago. And but yeah, she's still kind of serving regulars, so to speak, behind the scenes. So he learns from her that Foggy was back a year ago. He was pre-celebrating an upcoming court win when he got killed later. So that's probably what he was killed over. And kind of jumping around just to kind of get this plot, this one little thread together. Later, when Karen shows up unexpectedly, they go to like a storage place where they had all their old law firm stuff, I guess mothballed or whatever. I don't know. I guess because I guess you need to keep those case records around for a while, right? I guess.
yeah, there's brave reputation policies, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
So they found those case documents, and apparently, so another mystery solved here that Fisk's little port project is much more than just like a revitalization effort, right? Apparently, Foggy uncovered some old document from like the 1800s or something that says that part of Red Hook is a free port, which is like he says like it's a place not governed by U.S. law. I was like, oh, okay, so now this isn't just a let's become like a real estate lord and help the city rebuild or help the city make money. No, it's your typical thing that you think Fisk would do. It's so he and his friends can use that to launder money and goods into and out of the U.S. and make billions of dollars. So, why not? And just because I never heard of a free port before, I wasn't quite sure. I did some quick googling, and apparently the U.S. has almost 300 free ports, but that's kind of more like places for like tax and duty free kind of places to help commerce, not really money laundering or get rich with your friends kind of thing. Maybe I don't know, but so not all that uncommon in the U.S. and around the world too. They're all over the place.
See, now you've taught me something because that was something I didn't know about these free ports. So, but yeah, ports, interesting aside, I really loved seeing Matt and Karen work together on the field right here. Like speaking of that scene going to the storage unit and all that, it's kind of almost like kind of a throwback to the old days of them digging through documents and working through things and all that. I do think we need to get Karen her own armored costume though, if she's going to keep going out in the field and doing field work because you know she seems to be pushing it a lot, hanging out with Frank and Matt.
Yeah, although at least this season she hasn't gotten shot at, except maybe at the beginning of the season there. But and let's see, keeping on with the mysteries and Fisk's master plan here. Last podcast, I was wondering if Fisk would try to work in his new world with the new means by trying to convince people, like the high society people, the power brokers, to back his Red Hook project that way, or would he go back to his old ways of intimidation, force, violence, and whatever? And yeah, it was the old ways. Can't teach an old dog any new tricks, right? We see him bribing Jack Duquesne that he knows he's a swordsman. So hey, why don't you endorse my project here and give me some money?
Hey, give Jack some credit for going into that meeting with like just all the confidence in the world that he wasn't going to fold. Though I mean, he was like, "Nope, I'm good."
Yep. So Jack's got that vigilante swagger. Yeah, we'll see how that works.
Not too well
No,
by the
yeah,
end.
nope. He's in the cage later, so I guess not. And I guess he did whatever else works against the other elite people. Who knows what they did? I guess we'll find out. Although later we do see some of them in those cages in Red Hook, so okay, not quite sure what the deal with that is. I guess people won't notice that the hoity-toity of New York are slowly going missing. I don't know, or maybe he still has to work them over a little bit more, or I don't know, just imprisoning some of their families or whatever to use as leverage on them. I don't know. I didn't quite get some of that, but I get the first part of the typical Fisk blackmail. So
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a return of the Kingpin here, though. I mean, fully back into the crime, blackmail, the whole gamut. Right now that the plan is no longer completely under wraps, Vanessa's on board, and they're just steamrolling full swing ahead. Right? It's a lights out operation.
yeah, I mean, I guess give him credit. He did probably try to do the hey, I'm the mayor. Here's a cool project. Isn't it great? And they're like, no. He's like, okay, screw it then. All right.
Well, and we know that that Matt returning as Daredevil just kind of gives him that extra push. So between the Vanessa thing and the Matt thing, it's like, okay, fine, I'm just going to do it my way. This is what works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go back to what you know, right?
Yeah, when everything else starts lining up, we all revert to our base characters. So
Yep. And then we get the big black and white ball with all the city people and occasional other people. And then we got Matt shows up late, but he meets Heather, and then the Fists are there doing their little dog and pony show to the public. Like they have to do the first dance, and then Matt cuts in and dances with Vanessa, and I guess Fisk gets Heather. And then while Matt's dancing with Vanessa, he kind of tells her he knows she had Dex kill Foggy, and to her credit, she's just like, "Ah, what are you talking about?" So- and then kind of Fisk is, I guess, trying to put more of like a wedge between Heather and Matt by going for the big reveal that Matt's Daredevil. And what do you think about that, counselor? Or since you don't like vigilantes, what do you think about your boyfriend there being a vigilante? But before he can do the big reveal, Matt, with his amplified hearing, hears the gun chamber up there, and there's Dex up on the balcony or wherever he's at, shoots at Fisk, and Matt, being the hero that he is, jumps in front of the bullet, takes one like in the upper shoulder somewhere, and is laying there bleeding while everybody flees mindlessly.
yeah, which I think I have a couple comments on. We've seen Fisk take a bullet already once in the Marvel MCU, so I kind of question whether or not he couldn't have just took it. Uh, but Matt being Matt, takes a little bit of the hero thing, like you said, and jumps in front of it. Also, maybe a little bit of typical self destruction. Matt's not known for thinking things through, or not letting his emotions get the better of him. And I think we see that play out with as soon as he realizes that it was Vanessa and not Fisk, which he thought it was Fisk all the way up until I think like right before the dance. And it's just like as soon as he gets the chance and puts it together, he just cuts in and starts dancing with Vanessa and to have that chat. And it's like, here we go.
Yeah, because you think that, oh, Matt saved the mayor's life, and then, he's not really that bad after all. Nah, Fisk doesn't care. But
Now puts out a hit on him while he's still in the hospital.
yeah,
I mean,
and didn't in the old Daredevil show, didn't Fisk have some kind of like Kevlar style suits or some kind of like extra protection for that kind of stuff? But maybe being mayor, he doesn't, have those kind of assets or whatever to fall back on. I don't know.
yeah, they've played with different things throughout the comics with Kingpin because obviously, as with most comics, depending on who's writing and doing the stories, the power levels of all the characters always fluctuate, right? But he's been presented as super thick, super dense, almost not quite impenetrable, but so solid that he could easily take a shot, right? Whereas in this version he seems to be a little more human. So is it the suits? Is it just his from working out or eating Italian? All the above, Uh, but yeah, it's been represented multiple different ways depending. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't have an armored suit, not Tony Stark level armored
Hmm.
suit, but you know what I mean,
Yeah,
a reinforced business suit.
but it makes it more dramatic that Matt jumps in and saves the day. And yeah, I guess to your point, yeah, now that Daredevil's back, interfering with things, and is after Fisk or Vanessa or both, Fisk tells Buck, "Yeah, why don't you go kill Matt in the hospital there? Just make sure he kind of doesn't wake up again." And again, super hearing Matt hears Buck coming down the hallway, and I guess figures out that's who he is, and he's coming for him, and sneaks out of the hospital. Although I thought I saw when he got to his apartment, which I wasn't sure where he was at the point, but I thought he was maybe in the hospital somewhere. But no, he went back to his apartment. So did he go across town wearing his hospital gown and nobody seemed to notice?
They
I guess it's New York. I mean, so that's not the worst thing people have seen, probably.
Well, he had to because Frank very much so calls him out on what he's wearing to the fight. So
Yeah, I mean, granted, it was a blackout, so maybe some guy walking down the middle of the street when it's pitch black wearing a hospital gown, no one can see that. I don't know,
yeah,
but whatever.
he did his Spider-Man swings across the building, so he never actually was at street level.
Yeah, but yeah, so he gets back to his apartment, and of course he's like, Frank's there, and of course Matt knows Frank's there. So it's funny. And I guess he tells Matt that someone sent him to help protect him from Dex, which of course that's not their worry at the moment. So
But convenient.
yeah, but it gets them both in one place because since Buck failed to get Matt at the hospital, they've sent the whole vigilante task force over to Matt's apartment, and a bunch of them come running in with guns. And one of them, the Cole North one detective guy or whatever, at the end, after everybody's in pieces on the floor or beat up or unconscious or dead, says that he was the one that killed Hector. And you can see Matt, getting all, angry and riled up, and you can tell he really wants to kill him. With Frank's like, egging him on, like, you want to do it, it's the only way to handle it, do it my way. But stops himself and just knocks him out instead. Frank's like, no, you really got to wake up and get with my way of handling things. And as Matt turns, I guess, to have that discussion, and once again of like, we're not doing this. From out of somewhere, a grenade comes in. I don't know from where, and they dive off the building before like the entire floor Matt's on apparently blows up. I don't know. It's a big grenade.
Yeah, he's definitely apartment shopping.
Yeah, right. And like I said before, they're in the middle of the street trying to slowly walk away, and they get hit with some headlights. They turn around. I'm thinking it's the rest of the police, but nope, it's Karen. Hey, and helps them escape. So two questions: who either launched the grenades into the apartment, because it wasn't just the first explosion; another two or three happened after that. So who did that? Because it wasn't the guys in there, because they're all dead right now. Was that Buck maybe cleaning up loose ends or setting up something else? I don't know. And of course, we both said we were surprised to see Karen there. I thought her parts were done with the season. So yay, she's back.
Yeah, that was definitely a nice surprise. Uh, yeah, speaking of Matt and Frank, I love that we kind of always get the two sides of the coin, when they're with each other, right? And kind of in a shift from in when we were watching the Daredevil show, the Netflix version, it was Matt who kind of had his worldview anchored, right? He kind of had his morality, his the Catholicism, the approach he had to crime fighting, vigilante stuff, and he was lecturing Frank on trying to bring Frank to his way of thinking. Now we have Frank, fully embracing the Punisher persona. He's been through 2 seasons of his own show since that point, and now it's Matt who's questioning his approach, and Frank kind of pushing the whole way, like you say, kind of egging him towards his way and telling him to get on board. So it's kind of neat to have almost the role reversal as they go through different trials and tribulations.
Yeah,
Um,
because as Frank says later, like, they don't understand his pain, which we'll get to here in a second. But yeah, so it's like, yeah, now, Matt doesn't kind of is starting to experience that kind of pain. Like he's losing close friends, not family, but pretty much close to like family.
oh
And
yeah, but
yeah,
it definitely counts. Foggy was closer,
yeah.
so
So yeah, you can kind of see Matt getting to a point where he could become Frank, if the right thing happened.
yeah, all it takes is one bad day, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'll just throw out there just for fun was that Cole North character, right? The Punisher emulator with the bullets and the one that killed Hector. Uh, that name was jumping out at me, so I went and looked because I was trying to think. But the character I was thinking of is Maverick from the X-Men show, not shows, but cartoons, comics, and big Wolverine tie-in. But that character was David North, not Cole North. So a little different, but I thought that was worth looking up anyway. It just was a different character.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess they named him versus the other anonymous Punisher New York police crew or whatever. Yeah. So
Right. So I thought maybe the character might have been referencing somebody, but if it is, I haven't figured it out yet.
yeah, and then the final Kingpin plan revealed here, or I guess, or what's going on. So I guess Matt and them must have told Frank about Red Hook and his little Freeport thing. That's where everybody's at. So of course Frank storms the place in a frontal assault and takes out a few more of the task force before getting shot a couple times and caught. I guess my only nitpick here is Frank's ex-military, so why do the frontal assault down the main loading dock of the place? I'm not, but hey, whatever. It does give some good Frank fight scenes, and then of course leads to him being captured, tied to a chair, and Powell, our former, or our corrupt cop that Matt's dealt with a couple times, trying to convince Frank that hey, we all respect and admire you. Why don't you join the team here? Which of course, yeah, right. But Frank, of course, rightly tells them off and says that they're all a bunch of clowns and they can never understand what pain he's experienced, which then leads to him being, I guess, beaten severely to a pulp, which of course that's Punisher. That's how it works. Uh, and then I guess in the mid-credit scene in the last episode, if you stayed through and watched it, Frank's there in the cages. Some guards kind of walking by, and he kind of makes small talk with them. And and when the idiot guard goes to shake Frank's hand, like, why would you do that? But he, of course, he kills him, takes his keys, and you see him trying to get out of the cell.
So I'll agree. Yeah, I had the same kind of approach to what you said. We can nitpick about Frank just trying to stroll in and whatever, but as you mentioned with the ending there, I think they were mainly just trying to line him up for where they're planning to take him in the. I was calling it a series, but I guess it's a special presentation is what Disney's calling the whatever they're going to do with the Punisher next. So if it gets us more castle, I'll allow it. So whatever it takes.
And I'm curious where they're going to fit this in to what's going on now, because I guess the next season won't. They're finishing it up this summer, and it'll drop like next year around this time, I guess. So yeah, will this Frank thing happen between that? Will it happen after that? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, they're pretty. They've already got the next season or second half of this show, whatever they would call it, already kind of lined out. So they know what they're doing with Frank or where this is going. So the question will be, do we get more of him? Hopefully, either in the second half of or season 2 of this, or do we get the presentation first? And I don't know. Be interesting to see what they do.
mhm. Yeah, and then we get the gruesome, I guess is a better way to put it, scene where Commissioner Gallo gets betrayed by Sheila, who again another twist. You kind of thought that she's finally realizing who Fisk is and what he's doing, and she's trying to help people get out of that. So no, not really. I guess she winds up betraying him. I guess his driver gets replaced with one of the task force cops. They take him to Red Hook. Fisk makes a big little speech here, and then slowly crushes Gallo's head in right in front of her and a bunch of the task force. Ew. I, I didn't think we really needed to actually see that. You could have just kind of cut to like the blood and stuff shooting up and covering Fisk or whatever. But I didn't quite think they go that far in a Disney Plus show. They did.
They still had some. They still had some special effects budget to burn at that point. So
Yeah, and
go for it.
they went for it. Yeah. And apparently, before all that, even Daniel's now become, I guess, Fisk's little protege here, and he's basically there's a little scene where he's threatening the entire city council into agreeing to Fisk's plans. So, yeah, I guess things are getting kind of real in the new Fisk administration.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was a fun scene to have the interplay between him and Buck, right? Because Buck's kind of standing behind him, and they're just going back and forth against the council, and it was kind of interesting to see that play as they push the council to what they want to do. But yeah, going back to Gallo and Sheila, it's interesting how we see here the air quote moral politicians, kind of getting under Fisk's influence, because she had a lot of scenes up front where it was like she kept telling Fisk and Daniel, I was here, through previous administrations. I'll be here when you're all gone, and it's you're just a temporary uh, political term while I'm a career staff, and I'm going to be here forever. And now that seems to have changed, and she's turning people into Fisk, which resulting in them getting killed. So now, she's almost part of the administration and part of the problem, right? So that's an interesting shift as they kind of push that way.
Yeah, and the fact that he killed Gallo so graphically in front of her and like half a dozen or so of the task force, it's kind of like, if some of them were on the fence or she's on the fence or whatever, like they're in now because like, oh crap. So,
And, and and that's an interesting point, right? Because I also was thinking, talking about the way this show keeps tricking me, I guess, or I keep thinking it's going one way and it's not. we were starting to see some alignment between like BB, Commissioner Gallo, and he went to Sheila, and I'm thinking, okay, so this is the group that's going to go,
Hmm.
in the background to take Fisk down, right? The Commissioner, Sheila, BB, maybe even Karen, and we kind of end up with this cabal to kind of take out Fisk. And no, we end up with really quickly, in like a matter of a few minutes, we go from that to no Gallo, you know, Sheila now confirmed on the side of them, and it's like it just makes this monolithic thing that where Fisk ends the season, all the more imposing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if that was enough to maybe now really force her to question, like maybe she might, go back on that, but then can, you want to wind up with your head crushed. So we'll see if she has any kind of second thoughts here in the next season. So
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Fisk at this point, I'm just keeping a bottle of Tylenol on my desk and being like, "How's your head?"
yeah,
You
right. Headache?
know,
Right. I got something for that. Yeah.
yeah, you don't feel a headache coming on, do you? Yeah.
And yeah, some of our final scenes here, we get, uh, Matt's seeing what's going on, over in Red Hook. Karen sees them, and like, just basically armored vehicles everywhere, tons of the task force, which I guess grew a lot more than we saw in the one hangar earlier, wherever they were. So I guess, Fisk is recruiting some more. Yeah, but she gets Matt to realize that no, you can't just, blaze in there and save Frank and stop Fisk. It's like, you're hurt. Like he can barely, he's got basically one functioning arm more or less because he still, took a sniper bullet to the shoulder, so he's not anywhere near 100%. So I guess to fine, they leave, and later in the Josie's bar, Daredevil comes out from the back room and is talking to an assembled group of, I guess, good and honest police officers. We got Jerry, Detective Kim's there, other cops in the background, which just we don't know who they are, but they're obviously probably ones that aren't on Fisk's side, and they're going to start talking about how to retake the city from Fisk and the task force. But it's going to take more than them, so they're going to have to get out there and recruit, right? Which, of course, bleeds into season two. So who else do we think that they're going to recruit that's not already on the show, right? Maybe like you thought last time, a Defenders reunion possibly, or maybe some of them anyway, or do a mix of some of them from the Netflix era and some people from the new Disney Plus era, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I'm having to temper my hopes here. I think a little bit because yeah, like you said, I would love for them to either go pull a lot of the old Defenders back in from the Netflix shows, you know, bring back some Iron Fist, bring back some Luke Cage or whatever. But I think uh, if I could dream team it, which I did last time, I still want the Moon Knight, Daredevil, um, Frank trifecta. I think that's just like my ultimate show. But in reality, I get the feeling they're going to keep this one focused on Matt and Karen, hopefully. And so I think it's going to be mostly the players we've already kind of got in the city. Working with the honest police forces, you've kind of got it, right? So, we've got a lot of characters they can pull from that maybe, but I don't know. I think it's going to stay more down to earth. And just to kind of wrap up on that thought, I think we were giving Frank a hard time for just blazing in, but to contrast that, Matt was in the same position, right? Matt was ready to just start jumping in too, even as bad a condition as he was. And so I think it shows how important having somebody like Karen there to kind of temper you is, because that was the difference between the two, right? The only reason Matt didn't go in was because he had Karen to be the voice of reason, and Frank didn't have that because he went his own way, and it didn't work out for him. So
Hmm. Yeah, we'll see. Well, what was that cop from the Daredevil series? Was it Mahoney? Was that his name?
yeah,
Or
I was thinking the same thing when I was
like,
talking about other characters. I'm like,
are they gonna
it'd
bring
be
him
so
back?
funny if they
Yeah,
brought him back
because yeah, I
for
mean,
some more cigars for his mom.
yeah, we know that he's there, and yeah, or we got Misty, who wasn't quite a defender necessarily, but she was there, so they can bring her back. Although it'd be great if you bring back Luke Cage. It's like because at this point you need someone who's bulletproof. So
Yeah, for sure. Although did Misty end up with a arm?
yeah,
Did
she
she
got
end up with a
the
cybernetic arm?
when her arm got chopped off by the ninjas in the Defenders, or whatever. Yeah, she got the bionic, I guess the Tony Stark arm or whatever. But still, I mean, you need someone to like distract you. Like, "Hey, Luke, just go walk through that way. Just keep walking. Just don't just walk. Just draw the fire." while we go to get everybody out of those cages, you know. But yeah, or are they gonna try and bring in like we talked about before, like the Haley Steinfeld, Hawkeye, you know, Ms. Marvel? That you know they already had her dad there. They're gonna, but then you know that's gonna be some money. So like I don't know how much they're throwing at these things to bring in the stunt casting. So
Yeah, I think the question will be, and this is something that we really don't know yet, is what's the next TV show, right? So, is there something they could do that would line them up by using Daredevil to jump into the next character? So that might be the only reason to bring in a big hitter like that. Is if you're going to say, hey, we're going to use this to jumpstart the next series.
mhm. Yeah, so hopefully we can dream about a Defenders reunion since they only got the one season of the show, and I thought they could have kept going, but then again, that's when they started pulling, all the Netflix stuff. So we knew that was kind of done at
Yeah,
that
the
point.
licensing did not work in their favor.
Yeah. So it'd be cool to see some of them again. I mean, Mike Coulter is not doing that CBS show anymore, so he might be free. I don't know what Kirsten Ritter's doing, but I'm sure she's expressed interest in returning to playing Jessica Jones. So hey, you know,
Well, the
and
Iron Fist guy is definitely not working right. I don't know
yeah,
about
yeah. I mean, I think he's wanted to redeem his show, so bring it back with actually, which second season of Iron Fist. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. He does get better, and it's not as goofy as the first season. So he was getting there. So you gotta give him his final chance to show what he can really do, and
yeah, I was definitely more up on that than a lot of people were, as you and I talked about. So I'd love to have any of that back, but we'll see. They got a lot of options.
yeah. I mean, if they didn't quite know where they were going, how much they rewrote from the first half, if they if it's already so now they got stuff in place, and now they can dream, right? They can shoot for it. If they, 'cause they don't get the people, then they can rewrite it to just, oh yeah, we got another 50 cops instead of Luke Cage, you know. So,
I don't think that's a fair trade, but
no, but hey, it's good for the non-heroes to stand up for themselves and take back what's theirs too, with some help from the heroes, right? So it
right.
can't all be the heroes helping every single time, right? But we shall see. So, what do you think? What final thoughts on the season as a whole? Anything we didn't want to talk about or didn't go into details on? You want to talk furthermore? I think you want to talk about Heather, but anything else besides that?
No, I think that's my last big point. I wanted to kind of circle back and get your feelings on. Overall, and we've talked about this as we went. I struggled, at the beginning of the season, right? Because you know they really abruptly, took out Foggy, and we lost Karen. She left really abruptly after the case and all that, and you're kind of like whiplashed. And then they introduced Heather, and it was kind of like, okay, I see what they're trying to do. I don't know how I feel about this. Yeah, it's been a year, but you know what I'm saying. And then I kind of warmed up to it. Like I kind of liked her character. I liked what they were doing with her and the counseling with the Fisks and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, and this is just my take, but it seems like, especially in these episodes, uh, as Matt starts struggling, right? He's dealing with you know the resurgence of putting back in the suit and how he feels about all that and the struggle with everything that came with that and getting beat up again and all that kind of stuff. And the more he seems to be struggling, this educated super psychologist is like antagonizing him and giving him a hard time about the vigilantes and all that kind of stuff. Even after like she says, Daredevil saves her, called her by name, right? And she's still like trash talking the superheroes and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I was not severely surprised where she ended up when she joined the Fisk administration at the end because of how antagonistic her and Matt were, especially during the ball and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I just kind of went. I felt like I went really quick, whether that's what the writers were trying to go for or not. From actually starting to like the character to just like not being able to stand her and not liking what they were doing with it. So I wanted to kind of run that by you and see how you kind of felt about her as they wrapped up the season.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I mean, it's started out, yeah, like he's getting back into the dating scene. She's helping pull him out of his whatever funk, whatever you want to call it, for having Foggy killed. And yeah, things were working, more or less. I mean, obviously he's hiding who he is from her, and he's getting back into things, and she's kind of It's kind of like her acting like Karen all over again. It's like, how come you're hurt? Or why aren't you at work? Where'd this bruise come from? He's like, oh, I'm just a blind guy. Things happen. you know, and I'm like, dude, we're doing this again. But I figure at some point, either now or the next season, he would have to reveal to her, "Oh, hey, by the way, surprise, I'm Daredevil." But then with her, yeah, getting on this like anti-vigilante thing, even after, yeah, because it's like she already wanted to do the book about vigilantes, right? About what they think, why they're doing what they do, that kind of thing. Why they wear a mask? Well, it's because friends and family would get killed. Duh. But anyway, but the point, that's easy one there, Doc. But it seems like it took a turn after Muse tried to kill her, right? Like her and Matt at the ball was just painful.
Yeah.
With her just like constantly like nagging on him, or are you listening to me? Well, no, he's not really, but so I mean, granted, okay, some of it's him too, right? But
Yeah, and I'm not saying she's wrong. It's just that and I know she's that they're playing it up that she's been through a lot too. I just think that as somebody who's supposed to be trained in how this stuff mentally works, right? I mean, it's not like she's not educated. It's not the character's not supposed to be educated on psychology and reaction and all this kind of stuff. And she's counseling marriages, and then to have her react to him this way, like so antagonistic, was just like I don't know. I couldn't figure out if the writers just didn't want us to like her or what.
yeah, because like at the ball, yeah, that's where I was kind of like, well, she's just not useless, but it's okay. Obviously she's, Matt's never going to tell her who he is now, and now she's on this mental health task force or whatever. So is Fisk pulling her into his side of things with the anti-vigilante thing, even though he saved your life. Like if Daredevil didn't come swinging through that window, you'd be part of a mural somewhere, right? So yeah, I don't quite get where they're going, other than just having tension that they're still going to date, but he still has to hide who he is, and she's going to have some angle or something. I don't know. So I'm not quite sure where they're going, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually not negative on these things, but if I want to be negative about it, what I hope is that this wasn't just their quick fix at the end of the show to flip it when they decided to bring Karen back.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we want to bring Karen back, so we're just going to completely change this character or break this relationship really quick so that Matt's not encumbered with Heather when Karen comes back.
Yeah, although they've also dropped the fact, and even Matt said it, and I mentioned it, yeah, that Karen and Frank kind of have like the unspoken tension between sexual tension between them two of them, right? So we talk about their heartbeats being whatever elevated or whatever when they see each other. So it's like if he still has a love interest for her, he knows that her and Frank have a thing or an unspoken thing. So it's like where are you going with that too? Like
Yeah, I just maybe it's my Punisher's not supposed to be happy type approach, but I kind of take that as that's kind of neat aside, but I just don't see it ever happening. So
yeah.
I think they'll keep the Matt Karen thing going, and the Punisher's kind of a neat aside. They may use it for some tension, but I don't think that's where they're going to go with Karen personally. I just don't think it fits long term. I did enjoy their relationship and their interactions in the Punisher show and all that. I mean, they've done a really good job with it. I don't think Punisher works if that's the way they go.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and plus, this isn't the Punisher show. This is the Daredevil. So if if they go past season two and Karen stays around, then yeah, I mean, she's not going to have the hots for Frank on the side. You don't see Frank anymore. So yeah, I mean, there's got to be something. See, I don't know. Yeah, are they still trying to figure it out? Because they brought Karen back because the fans wanted it, or maybe they had some idea that to bring her back, maybe kind of later. And they just brought it forward because of all the outrage, or the rewrites, whatever they did. I don't know. Or it's just one of those little red herring things that they leave as like, ooh, what's going to happen? She hates him if she finds out who he is or not, or, will he ever tell her, because of all this stuff going on. So, it could just be another little plot thing to help you, get all excited and whatever. So, we'll see.
yeah, it worked. I talked about it for a good bit.
Yeah.
So
So there you go. Mission accomplished. Writers. Yep.
yep, and that kind of sums it up overall, right? I mean, if you can't tell by the end of this recap, personally, this was a great show, and I'm really glad they moved back into the Daredevil and Punisher world. It's great to have all these at least these characters, our favorites from the Netflix series, all back in the officially in the MCU, and you know, hopefully we look forward to more going forward.
Yeah, and I was kind of glad that we watched it like we watched it, so I could watch these last three, nonstop, because I would be really, like, oh no, I have to watch the next one. It's not out for another week. No, so I'm glad I got to like binge it to, you know, get my fix in, because otherwise, yeah, I'm like, no, you can't leave it there.
Speaking of binging,
Yeah,
what's coming up next?
yeah. So by the time I edit and drop this episode, the first 6 episodes of Andor, the season 2, will have been released, as Disney has gone insane and dropping 3 episodes a week. Again, don't know why. See last podcast, we're confused too. I don't know why they're doing this. So I don't know what we're going to do next time. At least the first 3 for sure. Maybe more. I don't know. It's kind of, we did the whole Ahsoka season in one episode, and that was like an hour and a half. I mean, I don't want to do, or 2 hours, whatever it was. Like, I want to try and
It was
cover
long.
12 episodes of political intrigue, espionage, whatever, secret agent drama, because that's gonna be a lot of plot. So, uh,
Well, and spoiler alert for how my life works. The concept of watching another 12, and I am a little farther. I'm ahead of you. I've watched the first couple, but getting through 12 episodes of this show before we do this again, I don't think there's enough bandwidth in my week.
yeah, I don't think I can binge 12 episodes in a week. So yeah, so yeah, I don't know. As we're fond of saying, check out the episode title, check out the episode description when you see it, and that's what we did. So,
And that's probably about the time we'll know what we're doing.
right,
So you're not that far behind us.
right, because all of you and us, we have no idea what we're doing next time. So, but hey, that's the fun of things, right?
Always.
It's going to be Andor, probably not Farscape, because we get a little distracted, or things take a little too long if we try and do Farscape plus something in an episode. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But for sure, the first 3 Andors, and we'll see.
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah,
See, we did know what we're doing,
yeah, more or less.
more or
So
less.
that's some of your homework, maybe more, maybe less. We don't know.
Watch as much as you think you'll
Yeah,
enjoy.
watch the whole thing and then just come back and as you watch the first 3, tell us we're totally wrong. I don't know.
If you enjoy listening to a bunch of people be wrong about TV shows, you're in the right place.
Yep. So that is your question mark homework for next time, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Goodbye.